So today I want to talk about timelines, parallel realities, whether we're shifting timelines or not, and how it all ties into the Mandela effect. So according to my spirit guide, Raina, we are all now on one timeline, and we've been on one timeline for years. Previously, Earth was split into a bunch of different timelines, and actually I feel very vindicated because Elena Denon said something similar, but I got to ask Raina to go into detail and explain what she means by the fact that we're all on one timeline now. Also, I have a chart. Here's my chart. Sorry it's backwards because of the writing, but I'll explain. So imagine time like a tree, right? We have time, and then these different branches are all different separate timelines. And then what you think of as the leaves on the tree are parallel realities. So a lot of people are getting confused. Timelines, which are huge different separations of the timeline, versus parallel realities, which are more minute, just slightly vibrationally different from each other. And they're all, if you look at, there's parallel realities, they're all on one timeline here, right? So what ended up happening, as Raina explained it to me, is that Earth was on a bunch of different timelines, and it depended on where your vibration was, where you were born, you were on that timeline, right? Well, because Earth decided to do this big shift that we're doing, there were many different forces and groups that forcibly worked with time to push us all into one timeline. I don't quite know the details of it because it sounds above my level of understanding. So pretty much all of us were pushed, Earth was all these separate timelines, and then these different higher dimensional forces worked together to put everybody on one timeline. We're all on one timeline. I call this the abbreviation timeline, and I'll tell you why. This is also how the Mandela effect ended up happening. So what ended up happening is we had the most positive of all the Earth timelines is what everyone got pushed to. And so the current timeline we're on is called I call it the abbreviation timeline. And the reason why, and this is where Mandela effects come from, because if you remember something different, that means you came from one of the other timelines. And I call this one the abbreviation timeline because this one, they abbreviate stuff that they didn't used to from my timeline. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, I think it's still around, but there's this cereal called Captain Crunch. From my timeline I was from, it was Captain, the whole word, and now it's Cap'n. So they do all these cutesy little abbreviations for stuff that just didn't used to be abbreviated. Now, we have been on this one positive timeline for a few years now, and we are not going to change. It's all part of this Earth transition. It's trying to get, because it was the way to get us to transition to 5D the fastest, which we're still in the process of doing. But they had to put everybody on the most positive timeline to make it happen the fastest because of how all the different timelines were heading. Some of the lower timelines were not going to be able to transition as quickly, and so it was going to be a big mess where, you know, more negative forces were going to be able to access the lower timelines. And I know it sounds confusing. I hope I'm explaining it well. But since we're all on this one timeline, was the most positive one, we all got pushed to it. We're all going to transition to 5D progressively, slowly together. Now, when I see people talking about how we just had a big Schumann spike and we're shifting realities, or we're shifting timelines, they're mistaking timelines for parallel realities. So, like, let me grab my chart again. So we have these timelines, but now we're all in this, we'll call it this one, the abbreviation timeline we're on. Well, we're all on this one timeline, but at the top here, there's different parallel realities, which are every decision you make, potentially there's a split in time where they're all, a version of you did this and a version of you did this. And so there's bazillions of parallel realities, and we shift in between them all pretty quickly, seamlessly, probably a million times a second. Depending on what your vibration is, you will seamlessly transition into the parallel reality that is most resonant with your vibration at the time. And we seamlessly jump through these parallel realities all the time. This is how manifestation works, actually. Say there's a reality where you're not a millionaire, and there is a reality where you are a millionaire. To get to that point, you have to change your own vibration slightly, and then you jump into a reality that's closer to it. And then you change your vibration slightly some more, and you jump into a parallel reality that's closer to it. And you change and change and change and change until you've jumped so many realities that all of a sudden, now vibrationally, you are in that reality because you've switched through many parallel timelines to get there. It's also how we have glitch in the matrix problems, where Sometimes you can vibrationally, there's little points in time space where there's like a bigger jump between parallel realities, one where it's actually noticeable, because they're all so similar, they're also micromentally ever so slightly different that most of us, as we go between them, don't notice the difference. But sometimes there's certain time space points where you can actually jump into a parallel reality that's quite different, and it's so different that there actually might be something that you notice. Or there might be a transference because of just that particular place of like an object, where some people have had like a pair of earrings they inherited from their mom, and then all of a sudden they'll find a third earring in their house when they have the other two. And that's because from another parallel reality version of you, she accidentally lost an earring because somehow that material ended up bleeding into your parallel reality on accident. Doesn't happen often, but it happens. So oftentimes when we're switching, when people saying we're jumping timelines, we're not jumping timelines. We're all on one timeline. We're going to stay on one timeline. We're jumping parallel realities, and sometimes we have bigger shifts than others, depending on what we have going on personally, what's going on globally, what's going on, in the cosmos. But yeah, if you guys have any questions on this, let me know. And I also want to mention, for anyone interested who wants to get a reading from me, I have discounted sessions for spring. And so it's the only time of the year that I ever discount my sessions. So if you want to book a full 40-minute session with me, I would go right now. Link is in my bio before they fill up.